I know we keep hearing how important it is for us to move and exercise and lift heavy things as we go into perimenopause and menopause. And today's episode, we're going to talk more about it. I talked about it when I interviewed Melissa Hyde, which I'll put a link to that podcast below if you didn't. It's a great interview. And we're going to continue the conversation today with someone who is an expert, who's an athlete, and also an expert when it comes to exercising and lifting weights in this phase of life. And it's important for not only, for all the reasons I discussed, but also I saw firsthand what happened to my father-in-law when he started having muscle atrophy. And as he got into his mid 80s and now he's in his late 80s, he can't even speak his vocal cords. He didn't use his vocal cords often because he lived alone. And even his voice now is super weak and he has a hard time speaking. So I can't stress enough the importance of lifting weights and just movement and exercise and getting that circulation going. And I have really made a promise to myself to do it more often. In my mind, I want to do it more than I'm already doing. And I also want inspiration in terms of finding something that I love to do, because as you'll hear from today's guest is when you have something that you love doing, then it's not so much thinking of it as oh, I have to go and I have to exercise. It's I can't wait to do this because it's not really a chore and it's something that I love to do. So we're going to dive deep into that today. But before I introduce my guests, I want to do a quick intro to who I am. My name is Andrea Donsky. I'm a nutritionist for 20 years. I'm a menopause educator and published menopause researcher. I'm also the co-founder of wearemorphus.com, a company that empowers you to take control of your health and symptoms with nutrition, lifestyle, research, and supplements. And talking about supplements, we have a full line of Morphus supplements specifically for women in this phase of life that are third-party tested and high quality. These are supplements that myself and my business partner Randy take, and we 100% stand behind them because they are branded ingredients. We only use incredible ingredients, branded ingredients that have research to back up their efficacy. Today, I'm speaking with Selene Yeager. She's a best-selling professional health and exercise science journalist who lives what she writes as an NASM certified personal trainer, TN1 certified nutrition coach, GGS menopause coaching specialist, off-road racer, and former All-American Ironman triathlete. She's completed menopause-specific training through MedFit and has also authored, co-authored, and contributed to more than 24 book titles, including Roar and Next Level with Dr. Stacy Sims. You can find Selene helping active, performance-minded women who aren't willing to put their years behind them through her work as host of the Hit Play, Not Pause podcast and content manager at Feisty Menopause. Now, here's Selene. Welcome to Menopause Reimagined, Selene.
Oh, thanks for having me, Andrew.
All right, we're going to talk about exercise and athleticism and just being active as a whole. And I have to tell you that this is one area that I really need to get better at. So I'm excited that we're having this conversation.
Well, I'm excited to talk to you.
Okay, so what inspired you to, I mean, obviously you're an athlete, you're very passionate about being active, but what inspired you to come into like the perimenopause and menopause space with it?
Hitting menopause.
Exactly. All of our stories, right?
Yeah. Story as old as time, right? Going back, I have always been a science and health journalist. That's sort of my background. And I wrote for a lot of the lay publications back in the day, prevention and men's health and women's health and all of those. I was also a semi-professional bike racer. I wrote for Bicycling. I was an editor there for 27 years, a contributing editor there for 27 years.
Mhm.
And I have given a lot of health, fitness, training, nutrition advice. I am also a certified trainer, a certified nutrition coach, on and on and on.
Mhm.
And in 2016, I helped Dr. Stacy Sims, which people may or may not be familiar with. She's sort of a pioneer in the women's specific physiology space. I helped her write Roar and got really interested in women's specific physiology because in all those years I was writing for Bicycling, which to be fair, it was 80% men in the audience anyway. I always just, everything was through a male lens. I never even
Yeah.
noticed, Andrea, that most of the studies were done on college-aged men. And it
Yeah.
didn't even occur to me. I would show up to
Mm.
bike races and 80% of people would be men. And I was like, that's just the way it is. So it wasn't until that time that my eyes got pretty wide open to the fact that to quote Stacy at the time, women are not small men. I was like, she's correct. So it was just
Mhm.
very eye-opening. And I'll tell you that the book Roar was designed to be soup to nuts across a woman's lifespan from the time she hits puberty. There was a chapter on menopause, there was a chapter on fueling and exercise, et cetera, and so on. And when it came out, we heard pretty quickly from people on Amazon and people just sliding into my DMs that one chapter on menopause was not enough. And I was
Yeah.
probably 40, mid 40s at that time, still racing at a very, very, very high level all around the world. And I thought, okay, but I don't know what else we would say. It didn't even cross my mind that there might be more than a
That's
chapter,
funny.
which I have flogged myself for since. But so let's fast forward a few years and I'm 48, 49, and all of a sudden I look in the mirror and I don't know who's looking back at me. I've always been extraordinarily muscled, and the muscles went away overnight. I felt like my power dropped overnight. All the things that women would say that I
Mhm.
never actually believed in my heart. I'm like, it can't possibly be
Until it
overnight.
happens to you, right? It's like
Right, right. I'm like,
famous
I'm
last words.
sorry. I'm like decades of like apologizing to people. I'm
I
like,
know. Oh,
so then I talked to Stacy and I said, they were right. She's like,
yeah.
yep, they're right. So we got together and put together Next Level, which was the book
Awesome.
specifically designed for this audience. And at the time, Stacy was working with Feisty Media, which is the parent company that does my podcast, Hit Play Not Pause, and carries my brand under its umbrella, Feisty Menopause. And they asked me if I wanted to do like a webinar maybe or some sort of online offering, educational offering. And I said, you should really have a podcast. And they said, do you want to do it? And I said, yeah.
You're like,
And in
yes, I'll do it.
and in 2020 we launched that,
I love
and
it.
3 million downloads later, here we are.
Amazing. Amazing. I mean, there is such a need for it. So what did you learn? So when going back now and kind of everything, hindsight is 2020,
Hmm.
what did you learn from the first book to the fact that you needed to add it to the next one?
There was just not this appreciation broadly and very much personally in how anabolic estrogen is, how it really does facilitate muscle strength, muscle protein synthesis, power, and all the other things. All the other
Mhm.
things we now know that estrogen does, from your brain all the way through your gut, et cetera, and so on.
Yeah.
So as a athlete who had always, you put in the work, you get the outcome. That is the beauty of training for athletics. And then when you take away this big piece of the puzzle, which is estrogen, all of a sudden 1 plus 1 is equaling -1. It's not working. And sometimes it's going backwards. And I would see women disappearing from the starting lines around 50. And it never occurred to me that was why until I was there myself. And I
Yeah.
thought, this is crazy. And all the things that were happening before when I didn't know I was in perimenopause, and I knew what perimenopause was, or so I thought. I just didn't know all the symptomology that happened in perimenopause. I knew there was this transitionary phase, but I had no idea that anxiety was linked
Mm,
to that. That when I was waking up night after night after night at 3 in the morning, literally feeling like my world was coming apart for no apparent reason, I just thought, well, I am finally coming undone. Like
yeah.
life has finally done me in, and this is the end. I had some night sweats, but when I would train really hard, that would kind of throw my hormonal system off too. So it was hard to tease that out. But all that stuff, I was starting to connect the dots, being like, oh, this is all related to hormones, and that means that there's something that we can do about this, and even irregardless of whether or not I went on hormone therapy, which I didn't at the time. And Stacy's thought process too was what you need to do and what we need to be talking about is helping women, again, whether or not they go on hormone therapy, because a lot of times you still need to do this when you supplement your hormones, because it never fully recreates that hormonal milieu,
Yeah.
right? No matter whether you're on hormones or not, is we need to put together guidance on how women can step in and do some of the jobs that their hormones always did for them naturally. And that was my big light bulb moment. I thought, oh, okay. So I had never lifted heavy in my life. I had never gone into a barbell room. That was antithetical to what I was doing as an endurance athlete. But she convinced me, why not? Try it. Can't go worse. So
Yep.
I went in, I got barbell training, I learned how to lift heavy. I started eating more protein, so all the things. I started taking some adaptogens for the whole stress response, all the things we talk about. And at 50, I went into Iron Cross, which is a big, hard gravel race here, and I won. And I
Oh,
thought,
wow, amazing.
oh, okay. And then I thought I can take the mic and I can start talking about this. Like this, not to say it's all going to be linear progression and it's all going to be smooth, but we have agency and there's so many things we can do to pick up where these hormones have left off and continue to be healthy and vital and active.
Well, first of all, congratulations. That is a
Oh,
huge, that's
thank you.
incredible. How did people react? Like, so when you were racing, were there other women your age, men your age? Like, what were the ages of the people who were racing and how did they react to you winning?
It's really interesting. Even through my 40s, it never occurred to me I shouldn't be doing what I was doing, that I was, and because I was too old, excuse me, but for endurance sports, especially like ultra endurance mountain bike racing, the things I was doing, you do peak a bit later. You know, even Ironman, I came into that at 39 and went to Kona at 39. But once I hit sort of the later 40s, I went to Google something to find something I had written once, and you know how you go into Google and you go Selene Yeager, and the next thing was age, meaning
Oh.
people, yeah. So I thought, oh, people are wondering about this about me.
Oh, yeah,
And
that's hilarious.
there, now looking back, I was significantly older than most women in the field. And one of my teammates was my same age. I should say two of my teammates were my same age. Rebecca Rush, who's a multi-time world champion, also my same age. So it wasn't unprecedented what we were doing, but it was definitely people were noticing it without me noticing that they were noticing it. That's probably the best way to answer that question.
I love that. So, okay. So now, you're an endurance athlete. How has your training changed from before you were, in perimenopause or menopause?
Great question. Very simply, my I used to train super high volume, like lots and lots of hours. That was sort of the mantra, ride lots. So you just go out and do hours and hours, 20, 30 hours on the bike a week, that kind of thing, and barely touched a weight. Maybe in the off season, I would do some strength training, mostly core, body weight, push-ups, pull-ups, that kind of thing. Now I have dialed back the volume quite a bit and I strength train year round, including heavy lifting 2 to 3 days a week year round. And
Mm.
it's kind of cool. And if I'm going to be honest with you, is that I find that I can still do 100 miles on my bike and I can do a lot of these very long things without putting in the volume. So I'm getting kind of the same output with less hours input, which is a win, honestly.
Hmm.
And I'm doing more quality work. So trying to make sure that I'm not, there's a phrase called junk miles that I don't like because I don't think anytime that you're out running or riding that you can call that junk. It's enjoyable. But
Hmm.
I don't spend a ton of time when I'm doing training in that gray, kind of hard, not kind of hard zone. I try to make it very easy so my body recovers well because recovery becomes harder, it becomes more important. A lot
Yeah.
of people talk about cortisol, and I think that conversation gets really, really convoluted when what you really want to think about is you still want to do hard efforts. You still want to exercise hard and do higher intensity. You just need to help your body come back down. And that means recovery, right? So polarizing those two things a little bit better helps training in this time of life, as opposed to always being at this kind of hard level where you're not letting your body reset. So you're not really making those gains and you're not really resetting. Does that make sense?
No, it definitely makes sense. So let's talk about this for a minute. So we'll get to recovery, but let's talk about preparation. So what do we need for those of us who are, and maybe we're not endurance athletes,
Hmm.
we want to go to the gym, we want to do the right thing. what would you recommend would be a good thing to do to prepare ourselves? So when we go, like for example, do you recommend eating breakfast, or do you recommend, drinking, being hydrated before you go, making sure you're drinking while you're exercising? Like, what are some tips that you have for preparation while you're working out, and then recovery? Because I think this is something that's super important for us, especially like, for example, on the weekend, I went to the gym, I went to a class, and I try to push myself to lift heavier and to do more. And then afterwards, I'm like, uh-oh, I said to my husband, I'm like, uh-oh, I think I might have pushed myself a little bit too much. So like, what are some tips that we can do to recover? I'm feeling better now, but what are some tips that we can do to help recover?
I'm going to answer both parts of those questions, and they both help. Like what you do
Yep.
before often helps what happens after. So
Yep. Go for it.
it's very fasted training gets pushed a lot, and I am anti-fasted training, which does not mean you need to wake up 3 hours ahead of your morning workout to have an omelet and stack of pancakes. It just means when we're talking about keeping that cortisol down, when we're talking about having our energy that we need to work out and having the fuel that we need on board, it just means bringing your blood sugar up and making sure that your brain gets the message that, oh, there's nothing to worry about here. She's got energy on board. She's got some amino acids. That means a little protein, little carb, literally 100 calories. Like literally, it does not have to be that big of a deal. Just a little snack just to boost things up
Mhm.
will help you hit those intensities, feel better, and you have those amino acids circulating through your system that already is helping your muscle protein synthesis on the other side of that. And then when you get to the other side of that, and this does not mean you have to rush home after a walk and make sure you have a recovery shake, but if you're going to the gym and after you're done, just have make get I like a little protein shake or something because it gets a little hydration, it gets those amino acids again. And we really do need more amino acids at this time of life because it's just harder for our muscles
Mhm.
to regenerate. It just is. So the more amino acids, leucine is a big one that you can put into the system, the easier you're making it for your body to repair, recover, and you can just do it again.
Do you believe in taking those amino acid supplements? Like I remember years ago, I spoke to somebody and they were saying that he was maybe, I don't know, he was probably in his 50s or 60s back then. And he was saying that he takes this amino acid supplement every day because it's going to help him for a plethora of reasons. Is that something that you recommend? Because for a lot of women, I mean, getting enough protein is an issue for us, right? But I'm talking specifically when it comes to our muscles and our physicality.
Yeah, I have them. I have them. You'll find arguments both ways. You'll find people who say, no, you don't need that. And you'll have to find people who say you absolutely must. I come down on the side of getting them into your system in supplemental form. You don't have to take a ton of pills or whatever, but I have, a muscle health blend that has amino acids in it, has creatine in it. And I do think that anything I can do to help because also with age, this compounds, you become more anabolically resistant to with age. So when women hit midlife, you kind of have like both you're getting hit on both sides. You're getting hit on this hormonal sides and just age-related issues. So
Yeah,
I do think that there's a benefit to supplementing them, and they can also just help with like concentration and focus and all of your brain stuff. So I think it's worth it. It's hard to get, to your point, enough amino
it really
acids. There are a
is.
lot of plant-based people, and you're not getting the leucine, which is triggering some of that muscle protein synthesis. So I think it's worth it.
I'm a huge believer in supplements just because, I mean, as a nutritionist, I believe nutrition is, the foundation for everything, as is
I
lifestyle.
agree
But
with you. Mhm.
but I do believe that we do need to supplement our diet, and not to the point where you can't supplement good nutrition, but I do believe we cannot get everything we need from food at this phase of our life. So I'm on board, and I do believe the same thing. Talk a little bit, you mentioned creatine, and I know that, when I think of creatine, and I know it's been very big now in the menopause space, and more people are talking about it, and brands are coming out with creatine specifically for women, which I love seeing. And I'd love to get your thoughts on it, because when I think of creatine, I think of my 20-year-old, 21-year-old son who comes home from the gym and he has his creatine shake, and he's been pretty like, and he is like, oh my gosh, his muscles are like huge. And he really says creatine has been a game changer for him. And I tried it for a little bit and I didn't, I think I have to give it more of a chance for me to try it. And like, and maybe I wasn't taking it the right way, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on creatine when it comes to building muscle and specifically for women in perimenopause and menopause.
Can I ask you what your experience was?
So when I took it, I found that I felt a little bit bloated and I found like it made me gain weight. Like I just didn't, for me in particular. And that I took it for a couple of weeks and then I stopped. And it could be due to other reasons, but maybe I didn't give it enough time because maybe that's an initial reaction, but maybe it goes away over time. But yeah, I'd love to hear your
How
thoughts.
much were you taking a day?
I follow the directions
Yeah.
on the bottle, on the package.
Yeah, creatine's a funny one. And I want to be clear about creatine because I think it's taken on a life of its own in some ways. You will be okay if you don't take creatine. I just want to like throw that out there. I think everybody will be okay if they don't take creatine. I do think that some women benefit from it. I see women who have found it very helpful for brain fog. There's some good research around brain health. There's good research for women across the lifespan for creatine, especially if they are vegan, plant-based, don't get a lot of animal foods. Creatine is something that you can get from your diet, so it's not like you definitely need to supplement it. The bloating comes up, the weight gain comes up. Sometimes what happens with creatine, so is that it attracts water. So you do get quite a bit of water weight with it and maybe bloating initially. For most people that does taper
Subside.
down. It
Mhm.
does subside. You get that more with, and that's why I asked the dose with higher doses. So there's this idea, there used to be this idea, which is fading off, that you had to have a loading phase with it. So there would be like higher doses for the first week or for next 2 weeks, and then you would titrate it down to 3 to 5 milligrams a day. Now, most people just say, just take that 3 to 5 milligrams a day, or even 2.5 to 5 milligrams a day, and it will just take care of itself over time, which is what I do. So, I
Mhm.
mean, you could, if you were interested in trying to see if there was some benefit, you could go to 2.5. And I'd
Mhm.
be really surprised if you found that result at that dose. Now, I don't know what you would find as a benefit. I find it helps with power. Like I do feel the difference. I wish it could put the musculature back on that I used to have. I mean that I could it's not going to make you have giant muscles. It's just at
Right.
this age it's just very hard to get big muscles. But that's my experience with it. I think it's the kind of thing that it's worth trying, and if you find A, no benefit, or B, it's having effects that you find unfavorable, then just stop. You
Right.
will be okay.
So what are your thoughts on how much we should be working out and how much we should be lifting? Because I'd love to get an idea. I mean, we always hear you should work out, 2 to 4 times a week or do this, do that. Like I would love from someone who's an expert in this area to give us an idea of what that looks like because I'll speak for myself. I was working out 4 times a week. I was doing a lot of weight training and I loved it. And then from a time perspective and schedule, I went down to like 3 times and now I'm at like 2 to 3. So I'm like, two is not enough. I know it's not enough and I need to get more. And it's so funny. I just had this conversation the other day, Celine, is that I am the most disciplined person ever. I've been working for myself I had a home office for now 25 years. You
Me too,
never have
28.
like
Yep.
like you never have to worry about like I'm always, I always have the motivation. I'm always in the office. Like I don't get distracted when I'm working from home. Like it was just I I'm type AAA personality when it comes to my entrepreneurial way of doing things. But when it comes to exercise, I cannot do it at home. It's like I guess I have this like mental block about because my friend was just telling me we went for dinner a couple nights ago. She's like, she found this amazing program and she's working out at home and she stopped going to the gym. And I was like, I really need to start I need to start doing it because maybe it's just that I need to find a way of maybe having more fun doing it. I mean, I have a great setup here, but I need to find that motivation. So I'm hoping that you
Mm.
could kind of help inspire me and all of our listeners to be like, okay, ladies, like we need to get going here.
I'm gonna exonerate yourself from yourself. You should not be. You should not be making yourself feel bad about that because I will tell you what, I also, very disciplined person, have been self-employed since 1998. No trouble being in my office at my desk first thing in the morning. I don't need someone to tell me to
Yeah.
meet my deadlines. I
Yeah.
train on my bike. I train in the snow, you name it. And Andrea, I cannot make myself lift by myself in my house. Period. The only
Okay.
thing I got a tonal, and I don't know if you know what that is.
No, what is that?
It's a it's a digital weight machine. So it looks kind of like the mirror, which is another, it's like the big full-length display that has a person come on and start telling you what to do, but it also has articulating arms that have handles and bars that become heavy, like give you resistance up to 200 pounds. And they take you through
Amazing.
workouts. And it's amazing. And
Mm, wow.
I get up 4 mornings a week and do that because they have programs specifically strength training for cyclists, strength training for runners, whatever you want.
Amazing.
And for me, it wasn't as much the so like I kind of liked going to the gym, but I don't like having to change and get my keys and drive and do all the things because all of a sudden like what could be a 34-minute workout turns into a 74-minute workout. Do you know what I mean? It's just like such a big chunk of your day. And
Yeah.
I get my socialization otherwise, so it's not like I felt like I needed to go to the gym to get that part of my life. But what I did need was to find I don't like thinking about I don't what I need to do, even though I'm a trainer, I don't like training myself. So I like that taken care, and I like that sort of motivation element of somebody saying, okay, you have to do this many reps of this. And even though it is just a person on the screen and I know they can't see me, they are still telling me you're doing 5 sets of 5 of these deadlifts. I'm like, yes, I am. And it just works for me. So
Right.
when it comes to stuff about, because let's be very honest, that kind of purposeful exercise is artificial. It's not a natural thing to do to make yourself run, lift, all that stuff outside of a context of when you would have to build a building and lift things or run to get something. It's an artificial construct that we do to keep ourselves healthy. And if
Right.
you don't like it for itself, it's going to be hard to do. I don't
Hmm.
ride my bike for exercise. I ride my bike because I love riding my bike and it's one of the happiest places I find
Right.
myself. If I
Hmm.
had to go out and ride my bike for exercise, I don't know if I would do it.
Mm.
I would find something that I like to do. So I'm very sympathetic about that for people. So to answer your question very broadly, 2 times a week is not nothing. And it is actually sufficient to maintain. Would it be better to go 3? Sure. But if you're doing twice a week, hang there, stay there. And if you can get yourself to do one more other times, great. But 2 to 4 times a week is all you need. I would encourage everybody to learn how to lift heavy because you do you do need to lift heavier loads, and that's anything sort of under the 6 repetition range, say 3 to 6 repetitions. And it really is about stimulating those muscle satellite cells to make muscle and to build power because power goes, we lose the power in our type 2 fibers. So you need heavier loads to really stimulate that strength, that power. And most people don't lift enough. Studies have been done, self-selected. Most people just do not lift enough. So if you can find someone to really help you figure that out, and know what that feels like. It does not have to be dangerous. It does not have to be anything that's going to hurt you. I highly recommend that. I highly recommend including a couple of jump moves along with that. That can be just squat jumps where you squat and jump up. Do that 10 times because it's really good for those fast twitch muscles. It's good for your bone. And then 1 to 3 times a week of some sort of higher intensity exercise. Yeah, those are the high notes. So those are the things that are going to help you keep your power and your strength, right? And that's really important because we want to stay strong and powerful to be independent into our old
Absolutely.
age. Like that's
Oh,
just
yeah.
such an important thing. It's so important. And after you hit those high notes, then it's just your base level foundation. Daily movement. Try to get up.
Hmm.
You probably sit a lot at your job. I sit a lot at my job. So purposefully sort of getting up and just getting in motion is very important. And that easier cardio, just whatever it looks like for you, whether it's riding a bike or jogging or whatever it happens to be, most days a week. I think that's the foundation of everything.
And and it's such a good point because now, especially, I'm in the middle of writing a book, and I find that I'm sitting so much because I'm on
Oh,
deadline, and the
my
book
life.
oh my gosh, so like I have to get it in, and so I have to be so intentional with my movement. And then I get, when I see like my fitness app, my fitness wearable will be like, "You haven't moved much. You got to move." And I'm like, "Oh no!" Like it's getting stressed. I'm like, "Okay, I got to go up and I got to like do something, right?" So that's why being intentional. So getting to the gym for me minimum twice a week, but
Yeah,
my goal would be to get there like you said, I would love to be able to get there like 4 times a week even. But I'm thinking what I want to do too. And I love what you said about loving what you're doing because I'm all about passion. And when I'm passionate about something, it's not work. Like when everyone's like, "Oh, you work for yourself." I'm like, "No, no, I don't work. I love what I do. I don't ever
100%.
work." Right. So if I can take that and put it into my fitness routine, I think I would actually really enjoy it. So finding something that I would be happy doing, then it's not
100%.
work, right?
That is the golden ticket, Andrea.
Yeah.
That is the golden ticket. And I hope that you, even on the days, because I am a writer by trade, that's what I do, and I know the
Hmm.
sitting thing. I hope you
Hmm.
find a way to get up and even just walk.
Yeah.
Okay,
Walk.
take walk
Yeah.
break. Yeah.
Yeah.
Walking is so underrated and so good for you. When I wore a CGM as an experiment for a while, it was astonishing to me the power of a good walk to
Oh my
like
gosh.
stay close.
First of all, I wear a CGM too. Like I do it for experimenting, the N of one. I'm guessing you
Yeah,
did similar, the N of one. So, but yeah, no, you could see right away like what happens to your blood sugar after you eat versus when you
crazy.
don't walk after, right? So, and you could see even if you're doing your squats or like whatever it is, yeah, it makes such a big difference just to move and see what your body does, which I think is,
Huge difference.
yeah, which I
And
think is
that's
amazing.
that's like it just made me think about the traditional ways that people have done things that we've sort of gotten away from, but it's just this inherent wisdom maybe that people like you go to a European city and everybody would take a walk after dinner, or
Yeah.
even in our country, that used to be sort of people would just say you're constitutional. You'd go out and you'd take a stroll and it works. It's really good for
It
you.
really works. Exactly. And you're in nature, so it helps to
Yeah.
relax you. And if you can get into the woods or you can, kind of like just, like breathe. And
Yes.
that itself is so meditating and
Mhm.
relaxing. So no, 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 I totally agree. So now, so are you still doing endurance exercise? Like, are you
Mhm.
still competing? Are you still out there in the same way that you were
I
before?
compete a little less. I got tired and I was starting to sort of I felt for a while that I used to call it a speed trap. Like as long as I was winning races or standing on podiums, I felt like I had to sort of keep doing that even past the point of wanting to do that. I wanted to explore other ways to be active that wasn't involving trying to be the fastest I could at whatever. Because I spent so much time racing through really beautiful places. I'd be in South Africa and you're just going, you
Wow.
can't stop and look at a waterfall. And that always made me sad. I just feel like
Mm.
I'd like to stop and take a picture, but there's no stopping and taking a picture. So I don't compete in the same way. I still do compete a little bit. I still line up once in a while just to go hard and have some fun. But I do things a little differently like now. So I'm doing, say, a 3-day bike packing trip at the end of this month. I am training, and this is exciting, for a 30K trail run, which is,
Oh, amazing.
yeah, that's a stretch for me. I do run. I am not the fastest runner. I am okay at it. But what I like about it is because I like the process of training a lot. Like I like the process of it, of putting in the work and seeing progress and putting it towards a goal. Like I enjoy all of that without having some preconceived notion of what the outcome is going to be in my head, which I can't do on a bike. I can't do that in some ways, but on a trail run, I have no expectation that I'm going to be at the front of this pack of anything. But it's exciting to me to be putting my energy into this other goal and just to go out and achieve it. So
Hmm.
yeah, I'm doing more of that. And it's been it's something that I recommend a lot on my own podcast because what I find is especially in athletic spaces when you have people who have been doing triathlon for 30 years, for many, many years, there
Yeah.
comes a point where, no, regardless of menopause, but especially with menopause, that you're doing a lot of comparison to your former self. And some people do okay with that. Some people it crushes them. And if it's crushing you that you're constantly comparing your present self to your past self and it's killing your joy, I tell people take a step sideways if you can. If you've always been a marathon runner, try a trail run. Try something you have not competed in. If you've always been this kind of cyclist, try this. If or just switch sports, try something a little bit different just so you are not doing that constant self-comparison and you're just enjoying the activity and the act of training for something without all that expectations. And a lot of people do quite well with that.
I actually think that's brilliant advice. And I think so many of us get caught up in where is my old former self? And I can't do as much. And so much changes as we go into menopause, right? And we tend to be hard on ourselves. So
Hmm.
I talk a lot about being gentle with yourself. And I actually think that's such a great example of being gentle with yourself, kind of taking that step sideways. So many of my friends have picked up things like pickleball and they
Totally.
absolutely love it. I mean, I have
Mine
friends that
too.
are telling me they're obsessed with it, which I actually want to try it, but they're like, it's amazing. You have to try it. So like they found another passion, which,
Yep.
and they're still staying active. So I think
So great.
that's such good advice to me. So when it comes to nutrition, like you talked about it before and you talked about how you're a nutrition coach, talk a little bit about how we should be eating. We know that we should be having more protein, just a little bit about it. I talk about it a lot, but I think it would be
I'll
great
say
to
you're
hear
the
it from
expert
you.
in many ways
But
here.
I'd love to hear it from, thank you. But I'd love to hear it from the standpoint of being an athlete, about, in terms of exercise and staying active.
Uh, Before we even talk about protein, I would like to tell everybody to eat their carbs.
Okay.
Because like there's such a fear of carbs that persists, and cutting out carbs today makes no more sense than cutting out all the fat did in 1995. It Cutting out an entire macronutrient does not make any sense, and it's not helping you as a midlife menopausal woman. I understand that yes, there is some insulin resistance that can creep in, there's some carbohydrate sensitivity, you still need those carbohydrates to fuel your workouts. It helps everything. It fuels your workouts themselves. It fuels your recovery. It helps your brain. It helps your mood. A lot of women in my space, Andrea, go into low carb availability and low energy availability, which
Yeah.
makes all the perimenopausal things worse.
Yeah.
So I'm just like, please, please, just eat. Sure, get your sweet potatoes. I don't, if you don't want to eat white bread and white, that's fine, but don't be afraid of eating real carbs.
Well, we need first of all, and I think to preface that, I mean complex carbohydrates, and we need
Yes.
vegetables, we need fruits. Like these are things we absolutely need. So, and we need them to make hormones, we need them for sleep, we need them for thyroid. Like we need our carbohydrates. But one of the things, and I think that's really good advice, and I think we need to look at what are the type of carbs you're eating. Like for example, like you said, like maybe when you're having your ultra processed carbs that are full of sugar and trans fat, maybe those aren't the best options, but really like you want to eat your vegetables. You can have your fruits if you're low glycemic, if that's something you're concerned about, but please make sure that you're getting it, because like you said, we need it to fuel our body and to fuel our
Yeah.
brain. So it's very important. All right. And then so you've got your carbohydrates, let's call them our complex carbohydrates, or
Yep.
fruits and vegetables, our protein that we talked about. What are some other things that you recommend for someone who's to stay active so they have the energy to do so?
Yeah, I would say going on to the protein bit for a bit more, make sure that you are getting it spread out throughout the day. There's a tendency to sort of dump it all at the end of the day instead of trying to make it in the doses spread out from breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I just say 30 grams. I don't know what you say. 30 grams a meal seems to be a
I say the
good,
same.
yeah, just
Yeah.
seems to be a good
20
target
to
to
30,
hit.
but 30 is the better. Yeah, I say that.
Yeah, I just tell people to aim
Yeah.
for 30 and maybe they won't hit it, but that's fine. Um, yeah, just because again, it the act of eating protein, I don't think people in the lay population really realize this, but eating protein in and of itself stimulates your body to be like, oh, we should make some muscle, like muscle protein synthesis, just eating it. And you combine it with exercise, and you've got a really nice combination of muscle making magic there. So, yeah, spreading the protein out throughout the day is important. Just just eating well, nourishing your body. I tell people trying to cut back on the simple sugars, all the stuff that we all know, and staying hydrated. I think there's a
Bingo. I love it.
yeah,
Yes.
women in this, especially active women, I think let themselves get dehydrated more than they know because that thirst response gets a bit blunted
Hmm.
at this time, and
Hmm.
hydration's also really good for you and
So
underappreciated, I think, how
important.
good it is for you.
Yeah, so important. I always say to a good rule, now this isn't so much maybe for an athlete, but for the majority of us, I say try to get half your weight in ounces if you can. And
Yeah,
like,
no, that's a really good. And
yeah.
then just whatever you need for, I mean, if you're going out for a 4 hour bike ride, you should be drinking a bottle an
Yeah.
hour
For sure.
in
Yeah.
typical situations. Yeah.
Yeah. So is there anything that you would want to share with our audience that you feel like we didn't touch upon, but you're like, no, 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 I absolutely think this is crucial that I share?
We covered a lot of ground. I think my biggest thing that I try to impress upon women in this demographic is that there's a lot of negativity out there. There's a lot of how terrible everything is at menopause, and it's just hell and this, that, and awful, and you're gonna lose, lose, lose.
Mhm.
And we don't talk enough about what we gain, gain, gain. And that is a big part of why I started what I do, because there's a lot that is really great about this time of life.
I
I
agree.
feel more mentally stable than I have maybe in my whole life. I don't give a F about what people think about me
I
the
was gonna say,
way
you don't
I,
give.
I don't. You spend a lot of your younger years just living like looking at yourself from the rest of the world,
Yeah.
like instead of looking out from your own eyeballs and like trying to figure out what you want and what's important to you. And I feel like when you get to this point, your whole vision flips. And you're like, oh, what do I want? Who am I? And you can step into that power. And we
Yeah.
do not appreciate that enough. We don't talk about it enough. It's a real big benefit of this time of life, in my opinion.
I couldn't agree more. So first of all, like I always say, I love being in my 50s. Like so being in menopause, being in your 50s, like when I was in perimenopause, I didn't even know what perimenopause was. So like for me, I'm like, okay, let's just like kind of fast forward. But being in menopause, there are so many amazing things about it. And one of the biggest things that I love, I think that are the most positive for me is very similar to what you're saying is I finally like I came into my own. Like I
Mm.
understand how just amazing I am at certain things. Like I understand what
Amen.
my superpowers are. I'm able to say, you know what? This is what I'm really good at, and this is what I'm really not good at. And I've been able to kind of hone in on that and say, if what for whatever example it is, it's like this is me, and I have worked really hard to get here. All my 54 years of experience have brought me to this place. And I remember a friend of mine, my friend Cornell, years ago, used to say his mantra was, I am me and nobody else is me. Like that is my superpower. It is me. So I feel like being in menopause has really allowed me to hone in on that and really appreciate who I am, what my gifts are, and what I'm able to do for myself and for those around me. So very similar to what you're saying. So what would you, so what, let me flip it on you now. What would you say would be that for you? Like, what is your superpower? What do you feel like now that you're in this place that you're like, this is me, I'm Selene. And when you get this, like, I rock it.
I am very straightforward. I am very authentic. I think that authenticity is one of my superpowers. I used to spend a lot of time trying to figure out how to be somebody other than myself,
Mm,
because I felt kind of strange. I felt kind of like I was a different, but I am different. Whatever it is, we're all different. But I feel like when you lean into that, it's just like good things follow it. Then when you're trying to chase something that you're not, or trying to be something that you're not. My superpower has always been being able to take information and make it digestible to a lot of different audiences. That's what I have done my entire life as a writer. It's what I've done, and that's now what I'm doing in this space in podcasting and creating newsletters is just taking wide body of information and distilling it and finding how it will resonate with different audiences. That's just what I do. And I live what I write, I live what I podcast. You get what you see, all those
Love
things.
it.
But I'm very comfortable in that now. I'm very comfortable with just being who I am and using my voice and having it be my own voice and being confident in that. And that only comes, I think, with time and maybe with a hormonal shift. Yeah, maybe with a
Well, first of all, you could tell, like, I love it. You own your power, you're confident, and it comes across in when you're speaking to you. So I love that. And I love that you recognize that in yourself. And I so appreciate you coming on my podcast and sharing your knowledge and with myself and with our community because authenticity, I feel like I think that message will resonate with so many of our listeners. It's like, I am who I am. You don't like it? Okay, what are we gonna do? Like it is who I am. It took me long enough to get here, and now this is
yeah.
me. you know? So
Yeah, yeah, there's only so many. I tell people that too. You get to this place, and I think you also realize that time is really infinite, not infinite, but finite and precious. And you want to live forward with all of yourself and give the rest of your years all of yourself. And to do that, you have to just embrace and appreciate yourself.
I love it. Well, I think that's a great message to end the interview and to leave our listeners with because to me, it's such a positive way to end it. So I'm going to stop it
Thanks.
there, and I'm going to ask you to please share where people can find you. How can they sign up for your newsletter? I know you mentioned your podcast, but let everybody know how they can reach out to you.
One place. I will send people to feistymenopause.com. You will find Hit Play Not Pause there. You will find the Feisty 40 Plus newsletter, all of the things right there. So they can find me at feistymenopause.com.
I love it. Thank you so much for doing this today.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed my interview with Selene as much as I did, and I hope it inspired you to get moving and to exercise and to lift heavy weights. If you did enjoy it, please share it because the more you share shows you care. And please take a moment to rate and review our podcast so that more women in perimenopause and menopause can be inspired by Selene and our other guests who share their incredible knowledge with us on a weekly basis. Thank you for spending the last little bit with me. I know there's a lot you could be doing, but instead you chose to spend your time with me. And for that, I am grateful. I'll see you at the next interview.